Have you ever wondered why certain events unfold in your life? There are times when we experience moments of joy, unexpected surprises, and even hardships that seem to shake us to the core. But in those very moments, could it be that God is sending a message to us? Is it possible that every twist and turn, whether positive or challenging, holds a deeper meaning, a divine purpose? Sometimes, we may not fully understand why things happen, but what if these events are more than just coincidences? What if, through these experiences, God is trying to speak to us? As we journey through life, we encounter various seasons. Some are full of laughter and success, while others are filled with trials and pain. Yet through every season, there is an opportunity to find meaning and purpose, especially when we begin to look for the spiritual messages hidden within each event. These moments, whether big or small, can often lead us to a deeper connection with God. It's in those times of uncertainty or joy that we can feel His presence guiding us, gently nudging us toward a clearer understanding of our path. Today, we'll explore just how God might be communicating with us through the events in our lives. We often hear people talk about signs from the universe or serendipitous encounters, but what if those moments are not random at all? What if, in reality, they are the voice of God reaching out to us, offering guidance, comfort, and sometimes a gentle reminder that we are never alone in this journey? You might find that the unexpected challenges we face are not simply obstacles, but opportunities for growth and reflection. The joy we experience in success might not just be a stroke of luck, but rather a reflection of God's love and blessings. Even in the smallest of moments, we can feel His presence when we open our hearts and minds to the possibility that He is speaking to us through the very events that shape our lives. The truth is, God often works in ways we cannot always understand, but by staying connected to our faith, we begin to see the patterns of His messages in the world around us. Perhaps it's a kind word from a stranger, an unexpected opportunity, or even a quiet moment of peace during chaos. These can all be seen as whispers from God, guiding us, encouraging us, and reminding us that His plan for us is unfolding every day. If you've ever experienced a time when you thought you were lost, yet somehow found your way, or when you felt overwhelmed but then noticed a moment of clarity, you may have been receiving a message from God. These moments are not accidents. They are invitations to look deeper, to reflect on how the divine works in the tapestry of our lives. And as we begin to recognize these signs, we can live with more intention, embracing the messages God has for us with open hearts. In this video, we will delve into how God's messages appear through life's most defining events, from the moments of trial to those of triumph. We'll explore how His presence can be felt in every part of our lives, if we're willing to listen and be open to His guidance. It's a journey of discovery, a path that encourages us to pause and reflect on the ways God has been with us all along, even when we didn't recognize it at the time. If you find this message comforting and inspiring, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might benefit from it, and subscribe to the channel for more spiritual insights. Together, let's continue to explore how God speaks to us through the events in our lives, and may we always be open to the messages He wants us to hear. Life often feels like a series of unpredictable events, full of twists and turns. Some of these events are joyful and uplifting, while others can be overwhelming and challenging. At times, we may find ourselves feeling lost, unsure of where we are headed, and questioning the purpose of what we are going through. But if we take a closer look at those moments, we may begin to realize that there is a deeper presence guiding us through, a divine hand that has been there all along, helping us navigate the storm. This presence is God, and it often reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. One of the most powerful experiences of feeling God's presence is when we find ourselves in moments of hopelessness. Life can throw obstacles our way that leave us feeling defeated and unsure of how to move forward. It might be the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, a health crisis, or simply the weight of everyday struggles that can feel too heavy to bear. In these times, we may feel completely alone, as though we have nowhere to turn. But if we open our hearts and minds, we may start to notice something remarkable. Help can come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes it arrives just when we need it the most. There have been many moments in my life when I have felt like the world was crashing down around me. At times, the weight of my worries seemed unbearable, and the future appeared uncertain. I was unsure of how I would ever overcome the challenges that I was facing. Yet in those darkest moments, something beautiful happened. I would meet someone, often a stranger, who would offer a kind word, share a piece of advice, or simply listen with empathy. In those moments, I would feel an overwhelming sense of peace, a reminder that I wasn't alone, that I was being cared for in ways I couldn't even understand. One time, I was going through a particularly difficult period in my life, when everything seemed to be falling apart. I had just lost my job and was struggling with feelings of inadequacy and failure. I was sitting alone at a coffee shop, consumed by my thoughts and fears about the future. As I sipped my drink, I noticed a stranger sitting at the table next to me, reading a book. For reasons I couldn't quite explain, I felt compelled to start a conversation with this person. We exchanged small talk, but then something incredible happened. This stranger shared a story with me about their own struggles and how they had found peace and strength through faith during their toughest moments. The words they spoke were so powerful and relevant to what I was going through at the time. In that moment, I felt a sense of clarity and calm that I hadn't experienced in weeks. It was as if God had sent this person into my life at exactly the right time to offer me the encouragement I so desperately needed. I knew in my heart that this wasn't just a coincidence. This was a message from God, delivered through the kindness and compassion of a stranger. This experience reminded me that God's messages often come in the form of simple interactions, an encouraging word, a meaningful conversation, or even a random act of kindness. We may not always recognize them as divine messages at first, but when we look back on them, we begin to see the pattern. God's presence is woven through every moment, even the seemingly mundane or ordinary ones. It's easy to overlook these small signs, especially when we're caught up in the busyness of life or consumed by our own worries. But when we pause and pay attention, we can begin to see how God is using the simplest things in life to remind us that He is with us, guiding us every step of the way. Another way God's presence can be felt is through moments of inner peace. There are times in life when we may feel overwhelmed by the noise of the world, whether it's the pressures of work, the stress of relationships, or the constant barrage of information we receive from our phones and social media. In the midst of all this chaos, it can be difficult to hear our own thoughts, let alone recognize the still, small voice of God. But even in the busiest and most stressful moments, there are opportunities for us to find peace, and when we do, it is often a sign that God is speaking to us. I remember a time when I was caught in the whirlwind of a busy work schedule. The demands of my job, coupled with personal responsibilities, had left me feeling drained and disconnected from everything that really mattered. I was constantly on the go, never taking time to slow down and reflect. One afternoon, after a particularly long day, I decided to take a walk outside to clear my mind. As I walked, I began to notice the beauty of the world around me, the gentle breeze, the chirping of birds, the warmth of the sun on my face. For the first time in days, I felt a deep sense of calm. It was as if time had slowed down, and I was able to fully experience the present moment. In that stillness, I felt a profound sense of peace, as though God was quietly reminding me that I didn't need to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. He was there, watching over me, offering me rest and renewal. That moment of peace became a powerful reminder that God is always with us, even in the busiest times of life. When we take the time to be still and listen, we can feel His presence and hear His voice guiding us. These are just a few examples of how God's presence can show up in our lives when we need it most. But there are countless other ways that He communicates with us, through the beauty of nature, the love and support of family and friends, the quiet moments of reflection, and even through the trials and challenges that we face. Every event in our lives is an opportunity to recognize God's presence and to receive the messages He has for us. Whether we are facing joy or sorrow, success or failure, God is always there, walking with us, offering His guidance and love. The deeper message in all of these moments is that God can send messages through the simplest things in life. These messages may not always come in the form of dramatic miracles or grand gestures. Often, they arrive in quiet, subtle ways, through a kind word, a helping hand, or a moment of peace in the midst of chaos. But these are the very moments that can change our lives and lead us closer to God. When we begin to recognize these signs, we start to see how God is working in our lives, guiding us, comforting us, and encouraging us to keep moving forward. In the end, the message is clear. God is always with us, and He speaks to us through the events of our lives. Whether it's a chance encounter with a stranger, a moment of inner peace, or an unexpected opportunity, God's presence is woven into every part of our journey. All we need to do is pay attention, open our hearts, and listen. When we do, we'll begin to see the beauty and wisdom in the simplest moments, and we'll come to understand that God is guiding us every step of the way. Life is full of unexpected turns. Just when we think we have everything figured out, we are faced with challenges and difficulties that shake us to our core. These moments can be overwhelming, especially when they seem to come out of nowhere. We often find ourselves questioning why things aren't going the way we planned, and it's easy to feel lost, confused, or even abandoned. In times of hardship, we may wonder, where is God in all of this? Why is this happening to me? But what if these challenges, these very moments of difficulty, are not signs of abandonment? What if, instead, they are opportunities for us to grow in ways we never expected? What if the trials we face are not random, but instead part of a greater plan? One in which God is teaching us valuable lessons that will help us become stronger, more compassionate, and more connected to Him. We often hear the phrase, "Everything happens for a reason," and while it can sound cliché, there is a profound truth in it. The difficulties we encounter in life can serve as stepping stones toward a deeper understanding of ourselves, our faith, and our relationship with God. When life doesn't go as planned, it doesn't mean that we are lost or abandoned. It means that God is offering us an opportunity to grow and mature spiritually, to learn lessons that will shape us into the people we are meant to become. There have been many times in my life when I felt completely out of control, as though everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. I remember a period when I was faced with a series of setbacks, financial struggles, a failed project, and personal challenges that left me feeling helpless. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. I felt as though I was walking through a dark tunnel with no end in sight. The weight of uncertainty was overwhelming, and I questioned whether I would ever be able to overcome these obstacles. But in those moments of despair, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden miracle, but rather a gradual realization that these challenges were not the end of my story. As I reflected on my struggles, I began to see them in a different light. I started to recognize that each challenge was, in fact, an opportunity to draw closer to God, to deepen my faith, and to learn the virtues that would help me grow stronger. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was patience. I had always been someone who wanted immediate results, someone who believed that hard work and effort should be rewarded quickly. But during this period of difficulty, I had no choice but to wait. I had no control over the outcome of my circumstances, and I had to learn to surrender to God's timing. I had to trust that He knew what was best for me, even when I couldn't see the bigger picture. Through this experience, I came to understand that patience is not just about waiting for things to get better. It is about trusting in God's plan, even when the path ahead is unclear. Another lesson I learned was the importance of faith. During my struggles, it was easy to question my beliefs and wonder if God had forgotten about me. But I came to realize that faith isn't just about believing when things are going well. It is about trusting in God's goodness, even in the midst of hardship. Faith is about knowing that God is with us, even when we can't feel His presence, and trusting that He will carry us through the storms of life. It was through my trials that I learned to lean on my faith in a way that I had never done before. I learned to pray more deeply, to seek God's guidance in every decision, and to trust that He would lead me to where I needed to be. Perhaps the most transformative lesson I learned through my challenges was forgiveness. At one point, I found myself holding on to anger and resentment toward a situation that had hurt me. I was angry at the unfairness of it all, and I struggled to let go of my pain. But as I spent more time in prayer and reflection, I realized that holding on to these negative emotions was only holding me back. I needed to forgive, not just the people who had wronged me, but also myself. I needed to release the bitterness that was consuming me and make space for healing. Through God's grace, I was able to forgive, and in doing so, I experienced a deep sense of peace that I had been searching for. Looking back on those challenging times, I can see now that what I once thought were setbacks were actually blessings in disguise. Each challenge was a lesson that helped me grow closer to God and become a better version of myself. I learned to be more patient, to trust in God's plan, and to forgive others and myself. These lessons were not easy, and they didn't come without struggle, but they were necessary for my spiritual growth. This is the deeper message behind the difficulties we face in life. God never abandons us. Even when we feel alone or discouraged, He is with us, teaching us and shaping us through our trials. The struggles we endure are not punishments. They are opportunities for us to recognize God's presence in our lives. Through them, we learn the virtues that allow us to grow in faith and character, and we become more steadfast in our belief. It's important to remember that God's teachings are not always delivered in the way we expect. We may pray for an easy path, for relief from our burdens, but sometimes God's answer is different. Instead of taking away our struggles, He offers us the strength to endure them. He gives us the tools we need to grow stronger and to become more resilient. He doesn't promise that life will be without difficulty, but He does promise that we won't have to face it alone. In every trial, there is an opportunity to grow in trust and dependence on God. Our struggles can bring us closer to Him, teaching us lessons that will serve us well in the future. The pain we experience in this life is not meaningless. It is part of God's plan to refine us, to purify our hearts, and to help us become more like Him. When we choose to see our difficulties as opportunities for growth, we shift our perspective from one of defeat to one of hope. We realize that God is not punishing us, but preparing us for something greater. As we face life's challenges, it's important to remember that God's love for us is unchanging. He doesn't love us any less when we are struggling, and He doesn't love us more when we succeed. His love is constant, and His presence is always with us. Even in our darkest moments, He is there, guiding us, teaching us, and holding us close. The trials we face are not signs of His absence, but rather invitations to grow in faith and trust. So, as we go through life's challenges, let's remember that God is using these moments to shape us, to teach us, and to draw us closer to Him. The difficulties we encounter are not obstacles to be overcome alone. They are opportunities for us to rely on God's strength and grace. Through them, we become stronger, more resilient, and more steadfast in our faith. And in the end, we will come to see that the trials we faced were not in vain, but were the very things that led us to a deeper relationship with God. Life is full of decisions, some of which are easy to make, and others that seem impossible to navigate. Every day, we face choices that shape the trajectory of our lives, decisions about our career, relationships, health, and future. Some of these decisions feel monumental, carrying the weight of uncertainty and fear. We find ourselves standing at crossroads, unsure of which path to take, wondering if we are making the right choice. In these moments, it can feel overwhelming, and it's natural to seek clarity and guidance. This is where recognizing God's presence in our decision-making process becomes so important. Making major life decisions is a deeply personal and sometimes daunting experience. When faced with big choices, we often look to others for advice, seek out external validation, or rely on our own reasoning and logic. While these are valuable, there's something unique and powerful about turning to God during these times. God is not just the creator of our lives, but also the one who knows us best. He understands our fears, our desires, and the deepest longings of our hearts. By trusting Him with our decisions, we open ourselves to His divine guidance, which can lead us down the path that is truly meant for us. I've had several moments in my life when I was confronted with difficult decisions that seemed to carry significant consequences. One of the most defining moments was when I had to choose whether to stay in a stable job or take a risk and pursue a new career opportunity. On the surface, it seemed like an easy choice. The new job offered the potential for greater growth and a fresh start, but it also came with uncertainty and a level of discomfort. I'd been in my current job for several years, and it felt safe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more for me out there. The thought of leaving behind the familiarity of my old job and stepping into the unknown was both exciting and terrifying. In the midst of my indecision, I turned to God for help. I prayed fervently, asking for clarity and peace. I told God that I wanted to follow His will, but I didn't know what that looked like. I felt a deep sense of confusion and doubt, unsure of what direction to take. I prayed for wisdom and understanding, asking Him to reveal His plan for me. After a period of prayer and reflection, I experienced a profound sense of peace that I couldn't explain. It wasn't a loud, dramatic sign, but a quiet assurance deep within me that I was on the right path. It was as though God was gently guiding me, saying, "Trust me, I have a plan for you." I knew then that this was God's way of guiding me through the decision-making process. Despite my fear and uncertainty, I felt a strange peace that confirmed that the right choice was to take the risk and step into the unknown. I made the decision to leave my old job and pursue the new opportunity. Looking back, I can see how God's guidance was evident in that moment. The job I chose led to growth, new experiences, and greater fulfillment than I ever imagined. It wasn't without its challenges, but I can honestly say that God led me every step of the way. This experience taught me that God is always with us, especially in times of major decision-making. Even when the road ahead seems unclear and we don't know what lies ahead, God's guidance is available to us if we are willing to trust Him. He doesn't always reveal the whole picture, but He gives us what we need in the moment. He knows when we need peace, when we need courage, and when we need to take a leap of faith. Another important decision I faced was moving to a new city. I had lived in one place for most of my life, and the thought of moving to a new location was both thrilling and daunting. I had many questions. Would I find a job? Would I make new friends? Would I feel at home in this new place? There were so many unknowns, and the fear of change weighed heavily on me. I wanted to trust that God would provide and guide me, but the uncertainty was overwhelming. I spent time praying and seeking God's will for this major life decision. I felt torn between staying where I was comfortable and taking a risk on something new. As I prayed, I felt God's presence more strongly than I had in a long time. I felt a quiet whisper in my heart, telling me that this move was part of His plan for my life, and that He would be with me every step of the way. The peace that came over me in those moments was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't the absence of fear, but rather the presence of confidence and trust in God's provision. When I finally made the decision to move, it wasn't without hesitation, but it was with a profound sense of knowing that God was leading me to this new chapter. I trusted that He would open doors and guide my steps, even in the face of uncertainty. And as I look back, I can see how God was with me during every part of the transition. I found a job, made new friends, and felt at home much sooner than I expected. The move turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made, and it was a direct result of following God's guidance in the process. These experiences have taught me a valuable lesson about decision-making. God is not just there to help us when we're in trouble or when things are going wrong. He is there to guide us through every major decision in our lives, big or small. When we invite Him into our decision-making process, we open ourselves to His wisdom, His peace, and His protection. God is not a distant observer in our lives. He is an active participant, and He wants to help us navigate the decisions that shape our futures. Sometimes we might feel unsure about which path to take, but when we trust God, even when the path is unclear, He will provide us with the peace and clarity we need. His guidance doesn't always come in the way we expect, but it is always there. It might be a quiet sense of peace, a sudden clarity, or a word of encouragement from someone else. But no matter how it comes, we can trust that God is leading us to where we need to be. The message in major decisions is clear. God is with us, guiding us through every step of the process. He sees the big picture when we only see fragments. He knows what lies ahead, even when we cannot see it. And when we trust Him, even in the midst of uncertainty, we receive His guidance, peace, and protection. It is through these decisions, when we rely on God and trust in His plan, that we grow closer to Him and experience His presence in profound and life-changing ways. So the next time you are faced with a major decision, don't be afraid to seek God's guidance. Invite Him into the process and trust that He will lead you in the right direction. Even if the path is uncertain, remember that God is always with you, and He will never lead you astray. When we trust in His plan, we can step forward with confidence, knowing that His guidance, peace, and protection are with us every step of the way. As we come to the end of today's video, it's important to take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed. We've explored how God sends us messages through the events in our lives, whether they are moments of joy, sorrow, peace, or struggle. Through every event, big or small, God is continually guiding us, teaching us, and helping us grow on our spiritual journey. When we look at life through a spiritual lens, we begin to see that nothing is random. Every encounter, every challenge, and every blessing has meaning and purpose. Whether it's through a moment of joy that brings us closer to God, or through a time of hardship that teaches us patience, faith, and forgiveness, every event is an opportunity to recognize God's presence in our lives. These experiences, though sometimes difficult to understand at the time, are part of a bigger picture, a divine plan designed to shape us, strengthen our faith, and draw us nearer to God's love. We've also seen how God's guidance can be felt in moments of uncertainty, particularly when making big life decisions. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the choices we face, but when we invite God into our decision-making process, we find that He provides the peace, clarity, and direction we need. He may not always give us the full picture, but He does give us the wisdom to take the next step in faith, knowing that He is with us every step of the way. When we trust God with our decisions, we open ourselves to His guidance and experience His presence in ways we never expected. In every part of our lives, God is speaking to us, whether we are aware of it or not. His messages come in many forms, through the kindness of others, the challenges we face, the peace that transcends understanding, or the quiet moments of reflection. If we remain open and attuned to His presence, we begin to see how His hand is guiding us in the most subtle yet powerful ways. As you reflect on your own life, I encourage you to think about the moments when you felt God's presence. Have you ever had an encounter with someone who spoke words of encouragement just when you needed them? Have you ever faced a difficult situation and, looking back, realized it was a lesson from God to help you grow stronger in your faith? These are the moments that help us recognize God's guidance in our lives, and it's important to acknowledge them. Every event, whether joyful or painful, is an opportunity to deepen our relationship with God and understand the lessons He wants us to learn. As we end today's video, I'd love for you to share in the comments any moments in your life when you felt God's presence. How has He spoken to you through the events in your life? How have those experiences helped shape your faith and your understanding of His love and guidance? Sharing our stories with one another is a powerful way to encourage each other and to recognize how God works in our lives in unique and beautiful ways. If you found today's video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you can continue our spiritual journey together and stay connected with more content that explores God's presence, guidance, and love. Our spiritual journey is one that we walk together, and I hope that this video has helped you feel encouraged and inspired to recognize God's hand in your life. As we move forward, let us continue to seek God's presence in everything we do. Let us open our hearts to the lessons He wants to teach us through the events of our lives, and let us trust that He is always with us, guiding us, loving us, and leading us toward the path that is meant for us. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. I look forward to continuing to explore these spiritual themes with you in future videos. Until then, may you feel God's presence in every part of your life, and may His peace surround you always.